As a new year broke, many people hoped that the official separation and Princess Diana's self-imposed withdrawal from public life might put an end to the constant barrage of negative publicity surrounding the royal couple.
There was a brief period after the formal separation when I think a lot of us felt rather optimistic about how this strange arrangement might work. A lot of the practical issues around two separate households had been pretty happily resolved, and it seemed that the public shared our sense of relief that this slow-motion train wreck of a marriage had finally reached the point where we could at least talk openly about how best to manage the mess.
But it was as if the royal couple simply couldn't stop themselves from continuing the warfare. Within months of Princess Diana's supposed withdrawal, the media battle resumed again. There now followed another damaging period of personal revelations, attempts to upstage each other, and third-party leaks. In short, full-scale warfare, with the media piling in.
The trouble was, it was only ever going to be a kind of an armistice. It was a ceasefire, not a peace treaty. And so what followed was 4 years of guerrilla warfare, I suppose.
The first salvo was a television interview by Prince Charles giving his version of the marriage breakdown.
His press office confirmed he had no regrets about taking part in the film, or indeed about admitting his adultery.
He sucked his teeth at certain points, but he had made clear all along that he was never going to say, please do not use this, or you can't use this.
On the evening this interview was broadcast, Princess Diana appeared in public looking defiantly sexy and glamorous.
Princess Diana back in the limelight, her private life exposed to public gaze as her ex-army friend says they were lovers. The book boasts that it tells of a love affair that spans nearly 5 years.
This is another high-risk strategy by the prince, an authorised biography over which he had no editorial control and for which he allowed unprecedented access to his life and private papers.
Since the prince's admission of adultery, the woman widely acknowledged as his mistress has shunned publicity, and the couple have never been seen openly together. But after attending this premiere of French Kiss earlier in the evening, the prince had slipped away to join her at the party. It's been speculated that Camilla is being groomed to be presented to the public as Charles's new partner. She divorced her husband Andrew in February. Next week she moves into a new house a few miles from Highgrove.
Her first public engagement in London since those headlines about her friendship with Will Carling. And the princess wears scarlet. Will Carling, captain of England's rugby team, still protesting his friendship with the princess is over, but still said to be seeing her. Julia Carling, the wife, who, it's claimed, said, I never want to hear Diana's name mentioned again. And then there's the princess herself, still stopping the traffic and drawing the crowds in Regent Street.
She was obviously taking a series of lovers. I could never accept this. I thought, not Diana, she wouldn't behave like that. She had people like James Hewitt, she had the banker, Oliver Hoare, well, from the banking family, and what was she doing with Will Carling? And they were, in ways, totally unsuitable people to keep their mouths shut, particularly Hewitt.
The trouble with Diana was she was so unrealistic about men, you know, she was a tremendously romantic girl right to the end.
In 1995, it seemed as though there might be a brief respite in the constant negative reporting of the prince and princess's lives. And the couple still came together periodically for state occasions and for their children.
I can hear through these walls, I can hear it when they're fooling around. I can hear through these walls, and I hear every sigh, every sound. I can hear through these walls, in the dark with the shades pulled down.
But even here there was no privacy, and the ever-present press were out in force. And in fact, this was simply the lull before the storm.
Part of what Diana felt was that either she was going to explode or implode. I mean, she felt the need to air this painful secret, her real, suffering that she had in this marriage, which had caused her bulimia and which had caused the postpartum depression that she'd undergone and all the lies and so on about Camilla. It boiled up in her like a kind of explosion that happened, and it was part of her own psychic healing process that she had to go public with these things.
Well, we had unique pressures put upon us, and we both tried our hardest to cover them up, but obviously it wasn't to be.
Around 1986, again according to the biography written by Jonathan Dimbleby about your husband, he says that your husband renewed his relationship with Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was, but I wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
What evidence did you have that their relationship was continuing even though you were married?
A woman's instinct is a very good one.
Is that all?
Well, obviously I had knowledge of it.
From staff?
Well, from people who minded and cared about our marriage, yes.
What effect did that have on you?
Pretty devastating. Rampant bulimia, if you can have rampant bulimia, and just a feeling of being no good at anything and being useless and hopeless and failed in every direction. Wow.
And with a husband who was having a relationship with somebody else?
Was a husband who loved someone else, yes. It was already difficult, but it became increasingly difficult.
In a practical sense, how did it become difficult?
Well, people were, when I say people, I mean friends on my husband's side were indicating that I was, again, unstable, sick, and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better. I was almost an embarrassment.
Do you think he really thought that?
Well, there's no better way to dismantle a personality than to isolate it.
So you were isolated?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
The reaction when she did the Panorama interview was one of shock. We had no idea it was happening until it happened. The principals, the royal family, probably felt let down.
The damage being done to the royal family was immense. The country was divided. You cannot have that if you're the sovereign, the head of state, which is what the Queen. You cannot have the country divided. You've got to try and have unity.
I think as her duty as Queen and grandmother, she felt this situation cannot go on. It's just deteriorating into the most awful, tragic farce.
If they had been allowed to carry on married, they would have continued spatting back and forth, whether it was on television, on the radio, in newspapers, in magazines, whatever. And from her standpoint, enough was enough.
But in the end, the Queen wrote to both of them saying, get on, gotta have a divorce, which was the last thing on it. She is a deeply religious person, the Queen. She believes in the sanctity of marriage. She does not believe in divorce, and certainly not when it involves her son, who's going to be king one day. But the damage being done to the crown was so great, she wrote this letter and said, do it.